Mortal Kombat needs to break out of its shell because let's be honest for a second, Mortal Kombat is way bigger than just a fighting game. And I don't mean that in a lore is cool kind of way. I mean it in this franchise could genuinely be something completely different if it wanted to sort of way. Because when you actually look at the world of Mortal Kombat, the lore is kind of insane. We're talking about titans fighting titans, gods fighting gods, time manipulation, multiple cool realms, undead warriors, cyber ninjas, you name it. And somehow, all of that is packed into just a fighting game. Now, don't get me wrong, it does work, but at the same time, it also feels like the franchise is barely scratching the surface of what it could actually be. But before we get into that, if you guys don't know me by now, I'm Mr. Frosty Flames, and I just want to say thank you all for getting me to 1,800 subs, and we're still going. So I'm still going to fulfill my promise and play Mortal Kombat Sub-Zero Mythologies, which as you guys know is one of the hardest and one of the worst Mortal Kombat games to date. So if you want to see me suffer at 2,000 subs, I will be trying to beat Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which is, as you guys know, is one of the hardest Mortal Kombat games. It probably is the hardest Mortal Kombat game when it comes to the AI. So if you want to see that, join the Legion and hit that sub button. Anyways, let's get back to the video. To start off, let's look at a game like Mortal Kombat 1. The story is literally about reshaping timelines, gods and titans trying to control fate, entire realms collapsing and reforming, and even titans from other realms invading Liu Kang's timeline. And that's just one version of the universe. And then you go back to older games like Mortal Kombat 9, Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat Deception, even the original arcade classics, and the scale just keeps on expanding because at some point you ask yourself, why is all of this only being used for 1v1 fighting matches? Because the lore isn't small anymore. It's not even arcade story mode sized anymore or tower sized, whatever, with arcade endings. It's basically like a full-on fantasy universe, and that's where the opportunity starts to show itself. And this is one thing that I want to say. Imagine this for a second. A full Mortal Kombat RPG, not a fighting game, not a side mode, not like a Konquest. I mean a full game set in the Mortal Kombat universe. Maybe you create your own fighter, and instead of jumping straight into tournaments, you're actually dropped off into the world. Maybe you could choose what you want to start as. Maybe like a Lin Kuei trainee, maybe like a White Lotus student, or maybe you could go bad and be a mercenary in Outworld, or maybe even something completely original. And then you actually explore the realms. Like imagine like Earth Realm, Outworld, Chaos Realm, Order Realm, NetherRealm, even Edenia, each one feeling completely different. And the best part about it is you slowly build your power through training, quests, and choices, not just learning combos and playing a fighting game, but actually becoming part of the world. That's where Mortal Kombat could feel completely different. And we almost got this before, and a lot of people forgot because they already experimented with this idea before, because you get things like Conquest mode in the 3D era and the whole vibe of just Mortal Kombat Deception, and especially stuff like Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. They already showed that Mortal Kombat works outside of traditional 1v1 fighting, and Shaolin Monks is the biggest example. That game wasn't just a fighting game spin-off, it was sort of like a co-op adventure with exploration, progression, having boss fights and storytelling in real time, and people still talk about it like it was one of the best MK spin-off games ever made, and people still want a second one today. And that kind of proves that Mortal Kombat really works well outside of pure 1v1 combat. And this is why it works better for Mortal Kombat than other fighters, because people might ask, why Mortal Kombat and not Street Fighter or Tekken or any other game? And honestly, in my opinion, it's because of the scale. Games like Street Fighter 6 or Tekken are still grounded in, martial arts tournaments, personal rivalries, and human level conflicts. Even when Tekken gets crazy, it still feels centered around its core story structure. But in Mortal Kombat has gods, it has realms, it has demons, timeline wars, multiverse resets, magical powers. It's already fantasy, and a lot of RPG games do well with fantasy, and it's already cinematic, and you could say the same thing. A lot of RPGs do well when they have a cinematic, structured lore. and it already feels like something that should be expanded beyond fighting mechanics. And now honestly, I already know some people are gonna disagree with this whole idea immediately of Mortal Kombat going past fighting games and going into other genres, because whenever Mortal Kombat lore gets brought up nowadays, there's always somebody saying, things like the story is too inconsistent, the timelines are confusing, multiverse ruined everything, and honestly, that criticism is completely fair. Modern Mortal Kombat lore has gotten messy. At this point, we've had, multiple timeline resets, you've had alternate realities, multiverse versions of characters, constant reboots, and then characters dying and then returning 5 minutes later. And sometimes it could genuinely feel like the story has no real consequence anymore, but weirdly enough, I think that's exactly why Mortal Kombat should expand outside of fighting games. Because right now it feels like every massive story idea that they have has to be crammed into like a cinematic story mode with just a few cutscenes and just fights in between, basically just cramming it into a fighting game structure. And you guys know Mortal Kombat has basically started the story mode things in fighting games, and they basically perfected it with the cinematic story mode, so it would be a shame for all of it to go to waste. So imagine if instead of rushing through things like realm politics, character relationships, faction wars, and just the history of Mortal Kombat itself, we actually got games focused on those things. Maybe like a Shaolin Monks style game that could focus on adventure and world building. An RPG could slow things down and actually let the realms feel like real places instead of just stages you fight on. And even smaller spin-offs could help flesh out characters that barely get development in the main games, because Mortal Kombat's universe is genuinely interesting. It just feels compressed, and maybe the lore wouldn't feel so chaotic if the franchise actually gave its world some room to just exist outside of non-stop timeline ending events every single game. At some point, Mortal Kombat needs to stop treating its universe like background decoration for fights and start realizing the universe itself is one of the coolest parts of the franchise. And even if they didn't want to do all that, or if they don't want to go a full-on RPG, they could literally just bring back something like Shaolin Monks. Like imagine a modern version, or say like a Shaolin Monks 2 with better graphics, expanded combat systems, online co-ops, multiple characters, you name it. A game like that would probably explode in popularity if it's done right, because people don't just love Mortal Kombat for the fighting, they love the characters, they love the world, the lore, the atmosphere, even the creativity, and that kind of experience actually lets you live in the world instead of just watching it from a versus screen. And here's the thing that actually makes this more interesting. It's not even unrealistic, because modern gaming is full of spin-offs, RPG expansions, universe building games, cinematic side projects, and Mortal Kombat is one of the few fighting franchises with enough lore depth to actually support it. Because let's be real, you could only reboot a timeline so many times before you start realizing that this world is too big to stay locked inside one genre. So yeah, that's just my take on it. Mortal Kombat doesn't need to stop being a fighting game, but it does feel like a franchise that could break out of its shell, because when you look at everything it has, like the lore, the characters, the history, it feels like there's an entire universe sitting there that we've only experienced in small pieces, and maybe one day we'll get a Mortal Kombat game that finally lets us explore it properly, but not just fight in it like in 1v1 fights, but actually live in it. But that's just what I want. Maybe I'm dreaming, but who knows? I could only wish for something better, right? Let me know in the comments down below. Would you want something like that? Would you want like an expanded Mortal Kombat game, like a full-on RPG Konquest game, not just inside of a regular fighting game? Let me know if you'd want that. But thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to join the Frosty Flames Legion. Thank you all for watching. Mr. Frosty Flames out. Ciao.